Greetings, fellow gamers. Today, we're going to delve into the world of controversial video games. We'll be taking a closer look at some of the titles that caused quite a stir among both gamers and non-gamers alike. From the brutal battles of Mortal Kombat to the criminal chaos of Grand Theft Auto, we've got it all covered. At number 7 on our list, we have Resident Evil 5, a game released in 2009 by Capcom. This game faced significant controversy for its portrayal of violence against African Americans. Players take on the role of Chris Redfield as he investigates a bioterrorist threat in a fictional African village. However, the game's depiction of African Americans as zombies and other monsters that attack the player caused widespread criticism for perpetuating harmful stereotypes. Many players and critics felt that the game's portrayal of African Americans as the main antagonists was racially insensitive and reinforced negative stereotypes. Some also pointed out that given the history of violence and oppression faced by African Americans in the real world, the game's depiction of violence against them was particularly problematic. The controversy surrounding Resident Evil 5 sparked crucial discussions about race representation in video games and pushed for more inclusive and diverse representation in the industry. Critics called for game developers to be more mindful of the potential real-world impact of their depictions of violence and oppression and to create more thoughtful and sensitive portrayals of race in video games. Overall, the controversy surrounding Resident Evil 5 highlighted the importance of responsible and thoughtful representation in video games. It also raised awareness about the impact that video games can have on real-world attitudes and perceptions. As a result, the controversy served as a wake-up call for the industry, reminding game developers to approach their depictions of violence and oppression with sensitivity and consideration. Next is Wolfenstein, a beloved first-person shooter franchise that has been around since the 1980s. However, despite its popularity, the series has been no stranger to controversy, particularly when it comes to its use of Nazi imagery, themes, and references. At the center of the controversy surrounding Wolfenstein is the game's portrayal of Nazis and their ideology. Some people have accused the game of promoting or glorifying Nazism, while others argue that it is simply a work of fiction and should not be taken seriously. One of the main issues that people have with Wolfenstein is its use of swastikas and other Nazi symbols. In many countries, it is illegal to display these symbols in public due to their association with the atrocities committed by the Nazis during World War II. Some people feel that the use of these symbols in a video game is disrespectful to the millions of people who died in the Holocaust. Additionally, there is controversy surrounding the game's portrayal of Nazis as the game's villains. While some people argue that it is important to condemn the actions of the Nazis and to portray them as evil, others feel that this is a simplistic and one-dimensional portrayal of a complex historical event. Despite the controversy, Wolfenstein has remained popular among gamers and has even spawned numerous sequels and spin-offs. In fact, some argue that the controversy has actually helped to boost the game's popularity, as it has generated a great deal of media attention and debate. In the end, whether or not you find Wolfenstein controversial is up to personal interpretation. While some argue that it promotes Nazism, others see it as a work of fiction that condemns the actions of the Nazis. As with any work of art or media, it is important to approach it with an open mind and to form your own opinions based on your experiences and beliefs. Coming in at number 5 on our list is Manhunt, a controversial third-person shooter video game released in 2003. The game puts the player in the role of a death row inmate who is forced to carry out violent and gruesome killings in order to save his own life, leading to accusations that it promotes violence and desensitizes players to real-world violence. The game's most controversial aspect is its execution moves, which involve the player performing brutal and graphic kills on their enemies using a variety of weapons and tools. These moves include suffocating enemies with plastic bags and bludgeoning them to death with hammers, leading many critics to question the need for such excessive violence and gore in a video game. Critics argue that the game's storyline, which centers around a death row inmate being forced to kill for entertainment, is morally dubious and that the game promotes violence and desensitization to real-world violence. However, supporters of the game contend that players are able to distinguish between fantasy and reality, and that the game's violence is no worse than that found in other forms of media. Despite the controversy surrounding Manhunt, it has remained popular among gamers and has even spawned a sequel. The debate over the effects of violent video games on players and the role of censorship in the gaming industry has also been fueled by the controversy surrounding the game. In summary, the controversy surrounding Manhunt is primarily centered around its excessive violence and graphic depictions of murder and gore, with critics arguing that it promotes violence and desensitizes players, and supporters maintaining that it is simply a work of fiction that players can distinguish from reality. Number 4 in the list we have Mass Effect, a science fiction role-playing video game series that has garnered controversy due to its portrayal of sexuality and the ability for players to engage in romantic relationships with other characters, including those of the same gender. The game follows Commander Shepard, a human soldier who must save the galaxy from an ancient and powerful race of machines known as the Reapers. Upon the release of the first Mass Effect game in 2007, some conservative groups in the United States criticized the game for its inclusion of same-sex romance options, which they saw as promoting homosexuality. They also criticized the game for allowing players to engage in sexual activity with other characters, which they deemed inappropriate for a video game. In 2012, controversy erupted once again when a group of players complained about the ending of Mass Effect 3, which they felt was unsatisfying and did not properly resolve the storylines of the characters they had grown attached to over the course of the series. Despite the controversy, Mass Effect has remained popular among gamers and has received numerous awards for its storytelling, characters, and gameplay. The inclusion of same-sex romance options has been praised by many for its positive representation of LGBTQ+ characters in a mainstream video game. In summary, the controversy surrounding Mass Effect centers around its portrayal of sexuality, particularly the inclusion of same-sex romance options. While some groups have criticized the game for promoting homosexuality, others have lauded it for its positive representation of LGBTQ+ characters. The backlash over the ending of Mass Effect 3 also caused some controversy, but the series has still maintained its popularity among gamers and received critical acclaim for its storytelling and gameplay. At number 3, we have Mortal Kombat, a legendary fighting game franchise that first hit the scene in 1992. The game has courted controversy since its inception, primarily due to its graphic depictions of violence, including blood and gore, and its use of finishing moves known as fatalities. Upon its initial release, Mortal Kombat ignited a national debate in the United States over the issue of video game violence. The game's use of digitized actors and cutting-edge graphics made its violence more realistic and graphic than other fighting games of the time, such as Street Fighter. In response to the backlash, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, was established to evaluate video games for age appropriateness, with Mortal Kombat being one of the first video games to receive an mature rating. However, the controversy surrounding Mortal Kombat has persisted over the years, with each new iteration of the game pushing the limits of violence and gore even further. Critics of the series argue that the violence is excessive and can promote desensitization to violence, while supporters assert that it is simply a form of entertainment, and that players can differentiate between fantasy and reality. Regardless of the debate, Mortal Kombat has maintained its status as a popular and influential game franchise among gamers, with several sequels, spin-offs, and even a feature film to its name. The series has been widely praised for its engaging gameplay, complex character design, and gripping storytelling. Coming in at number 2, we have Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the fifth installment of the Grand Theft Auto series. The game was a massive success upon its release in 2005, praised for its open-world gameplay, captivating storyline, and unforgettable soundtrack. However, it was not without its controversies, with a hidden minigame known as Hot Coffee causing a major uproar. Hot Coffee was a minigame that was not intended to be accessible during normal gameplay, but rather could only be accessed by modifying the game's code. The minigame allowed players to participate in a sexually explicit scene between the game's main character, CJ, and his girlfriend, featuring nudity and simulated intercourse. The discovery of hot coffee led to widespread outrage from parents, politicians, and advocacy groups who accused Rockstar Games, the game's developer, of promoting explicit sexual content to children. The game was swiftly removed from store shelves, and Rockstar was hit with numerous lawsuits and hefty fines. The controversy surrounding hot coffee sparked a broader discussion about the impact of violence and sexual content in video games. Critics argued that games like Grand Theft Auto contributed to a culture of violence and misogyny, and that game developers needed to take more responsibility for the content of their games. In response, the game industry implemented new rating systems and content guidelines, and many game developers began to take a more thoughtful and responsible approach to game design. Despite the controversy, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas remains a beloved classic among gamers and is widely regarded as one of the greatest video games of all time. And finally, taking the top spot on our list is none other than E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Released in 1982 for the Atari 2600 console, this game is widely regarded as one of the worst video games ever made. Its poor gameplay and design have earned it a notorious reputation in the gaming world. The game follows the plot of the hit movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial, as players take control of the lovable alien as he searches for the pieces of a telephone to call home. However, due to rushed development and a lack of quality control, the final product was riddled with bugs and glitches that made the gameplay unbearable. The game's reception was so poor that it played a significant role in the video game industry crash of 1983, which led to a sharp decline in the popularity of home video games and the bankruptcy of many video game companies. Despite its notoriety, E.T. the Extraterrestrial remains a fascinating artifact of video game history and has become a cult classic among retro gamers. It also serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of quality control in game development. And that concludes our list of the 7 most controversial games in the history of gaming. In conclusion, the controversies surrounding these video games have raised important issues in the industry, from regulating violent content to depictions of sexuality and the importance of quality control. As the gaming industry continues to evolve and grow, it is essential to reflect on these controversies and their impact on the industry. So, which of these controversial video games do you think caused the most uproar? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to keep on gaming.